Hi, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please come in, take a seat. I'm sure we'll have some stragglers coming in from downstairs at some point as well. Welcome, and a very big welcome to all of you here in the room and online for DSET Day 2 of 2024. And we've got a fantastic keynote session for you this morning. And as you know, I don't mess about with all of the bios and everything. They're all in the programme, so please take a look and engage there. We've got a few reminders for you. So because of the election period that we're in, all questions will be directed to me as chair, and the panel will be invited to make comments. Okay, obviously those that are not in uniform and not from the UK, you can say what you like. And a couple of extra things that's happening this day. So the series game showcase and challenge it's the assessment day today. So on the back of your badges, you get to vote for the most enjoyable game. So please go down and engage with the games down there. There's some really cool stuff down there. Relevant to what we've been talking about this week as well. We've got the wargaming keynote after the break, and also the multi-domain operations session this morning. Please engage with both of those. Don't forget, we've got best exhibit. So all of you exhibitors, we've got a secret shopper going around today to look at your stand. So it's not just if it's the shiniest stand, it's what's really engaging and what's been really good on your exhibit this year. And then at the end of today, we've got the drinks and hospitality down on the show floor. Everything's delivered there, and we look forward to welcoming you there. So without more of ado, we thank very much our speakers for coming in today. It's really important that we have this engagement for everybody, and it's all about collaboration. Our first speaker up is from Navy, UK Navy. So again, about the questions, will you please welcome Commodore Joe Deakin?
Good morning to you all, and thank you for this opportunity to be part of this panel this morning, which brings in so many military, academia and industry partners to look at the challenges affecting defence sector, our future capability, and for me, in particular, the Royal Navy's people challenges, what we're doing about it, and what the future looks like. As you've heard, my name is Commodore Joe Deakin, and I'm the Royal Navy's Deputy Director People for Training, which delivers individual training to our sailors and Royal Marines. About 4 years ago, the Royal Navy decided to amalgamate People and Training Directorates in a move to ensure, by design, that the people capability is considered end-to-end and as an integral part of our warfighting capability, rather than previously where we've been considering just as a defence line of development or as an additional overhead, quite often as an afterthought behind the equipment line of development. We are still in the early stages of the move, and there's still more to be done, but we're already seeing the benefits. Indeed, it's within the Royal Navy of the future, which is being designed today, that we'll see the greatest benefit of transition in terms of equipment and people capability. The armed forces of the future, whichever domain you're in, air, land, sea, space or cyber, they are operating and fighting in, will require modern training solutions, different skill sets and different behaviours if we're to deliver increasingly lethality, sustainability and availability, whilst improving the lived experience of our people. These conferences and discussions that we'll be covering, which we're covering, are crucial in delivering the Royal Navy that is both global, modern and ready, and fit to fight from 2040 and beyond. Given my role in the People and Training Directorate, I'm therefore able to discuss the skills, types of training and changes in behaviour that are required for the future, where technology is going to play an increasing role and have an increasing impact in the workforce which we need. Additionally, my role within individual training area makes me uniquely able to support the training aspects that will accompany such changes to a workforce. Having been privileged to work across joint environments and with industry, I also feel well placed to represent considerations from both these enterprises. To start with, it's crucial to understand the operational relevance of what's being discussed and demonstrated at DSET this week. The threats to British and Allied interests are complex, real and diverse. As the Chief of Defence Staff highlighted in a recent RUSI speech, most people now recognise that we've entered a new era of renewed great power and state-on-state competition. Notably, the ongoing illegal invasion of Ukraine and conflict in Gaza both have potential to future destabilise an already febrile and agitated world and are part of a broader uncertain backdrop. We see the increasing use of technology to gain operational advantage across all environments, and this technology has transformed the way we fight. You only need to have watched or read media reports to see how the use of uncrewed vehicles have changed the battlefield, both in the construct of and the skills required by forces. In my opinion, one of the most obvious differences has been seen in the delivery of the effect by the Ukrainian Navy in the Black Sea, with its sailors being beyond the point of delivery. That and the recent effects in the Red Sea and the Houthis using relatively cheap technology have a disproportionate effect on the security considerations, as well as the economic and environmental impacts. The use of uncrewed vehicles and effects in all domains is a fundamental change to our operational and operating freedoms. Whilst heavy and complex warfighting equipment will still be required, there are huge opportunities provided by the latest technology, and we can't afford to miss them. Of course, what is absolutely crucial is that we consider our people capability requirements as we look to exploit these capabilities. This is not something that can be done in just an ad hoc way by tweaking what we're doing today. It requires creative thinking and needs to start from a zero baseline. Our technology advances need to be continually adapted to the changing threat. And by 2040, we can expect autonomy, more lethality and sustainability. But without consideration of the people and their training they need, we will not be able to fight and operate our technology as it develops. New skills need to be ingrained in our sailors of the future. Close to home, our critical factor of the future of the Royal Navy rests with our people, along with our military, government, academic and industry partners, where we are a competitor for the global employment market, where the demand for STEM exceeds the supply. Demographic studies show that if we continue to recruit in the way we're doing now, then we're recruiting from a smaller pool of personnel. Therefore, part of our strategy, and the strategy we will need to maintain to move forward, is to ensure inclusivity across all social sectors, appealing to the sections of population that don't traditionally join the Royal Navy. Alongside this, improving the lived experience of our people is key to increasing retention. Ensuring our people feel valued and fulfilled is a key facet of retaining them. Rather than this as sort of a statement being mere words, amongst other actions, we will need to meet this challenge by improving our training through career to ensure our service people are adaptable, skilled, and employed in an efficient way. In a world that's rapidly evolving, technology and its increased threat to major conflict, we will also need to deliver the skills required to adapt as new technologies emerge. One only has to look at the war in Ukraine to realise that this isn't a nice to have, but an essential part of modern warfare. The basis for modernising the training offer, which meets the expectations of trainees who are digitally capable and who naturally search YouTube for guidance rather than consult a manual. So why does technology matter in training, and how can it provide operational advantage? Since the days of Nelson and the age of sail, the Royal Navy has been able to track its operational advantage to its most important asset, its people, and the training that enables them to harness their skills to fight and win. In the future, these people will be expected to operate in an increasingly complex environment with increasing amounts of technology, with the next generation of ships increasingly using autonomy. The danger is that we make the wrong assumptions about how this affects our workforce. This does not necessarily mean less people overall, but it will certainly mean different skills and remove elements of our working practices which are dull, dirty, or dangerous. Equally, technology provides a better way to help prepare us for the modern spectrum of compete to crisis conflict through a blended, live, synthetic, and distributed systems that can bring our teams together to practice from across the globe and replicate the complexity of our operational environments. We are already exploiting this as part of our future crewing concept and through our Fleet Operational and Standards Training Organisation, FOST, as many of you know it. Here, the Royal Navy is seeking to enhance integration of our joint national and international partnerships to increase the fidelity and opportunity for interoperable training at the individual and collective levels. Involvements with the US and NATO in progressing distributed synthetic training is key to our development. High quality training will deliver more skilled people to the front line and therefore enable operational advantage. We know that technology is a key part of being able to modernise our workforce and training pipeline. The Royal Navy, with our partners Team Fisher, is in the process of modernising our training for the whole force through skills-based training, tailored to the individual, digital upskilling and upgrading of training methods and media to target individual needs and capabilities. Technology can help with all of these, and I think it delivers in 3 key elements that will assist in gaining operational advantage. Increasing the quality of training, the efficiency of our training system, and importantly, the flexibility that we can gain from our training system. The first of these is the most direct effect of technology, the complexity of the modern maritime battle space, hypersonic missile threats, and swarming uncrewed systems, to name but 2, are extremely difficult and expensive to simulate in the live environment. The synthetic battle space allows repeatable, customizable, and high-fidelity training in a near real-world scenarios that would not be possible in the live environment. Live training will remain a crucial element for the future, but there is a need to be realistic about its limits and the use of synthetic environment to bridge the gap and to enhance our training capability, freeing up live assets to deliver operational effect and build on our advantage. For example, the use of synthetic training in delivery of our aviation capability across all 3 services and in line with the best industry practice. The same is also true as we look to develop our land capabilities with the Commando Force working in allyship with the Army. The Royal Navy is embracing this, and the London Tech Bridge that we have identified and procured demonstration sets of virtual reality bridge trainers to enhance our ship driving skills in the deployed environment. It is currently being trialled by both the UK and US navies simultaneously. In the future, platform-enabled training capabilities, or PET-C as we know it, will look to vastly increase the scope of onboard training across all warfighting domains, supporting exercise delivery from the UK to generate the synthetic training scenario to generate and sustain our forces whilst globally deployed and dispersed, both as a single unit and part of a wider task force. This will directly support the operational effectiveness of our fleet, as forces are able to train against representative threats, both in terms of mass and complexity, that is largely unachievable in a live environment. Beyond this, trying to manage such a large training system is difficult, not least because it's geographically dispersed, and the technology should be continually upgraded. And because, as the Royal Navy force elements are deployed persistently overseas, with crews and workforce rotating in and out of the theatres. Therefore, training activity is increasingly conducted from overseas locations throughout the deployment cycle, rather than exclusively in home waters or at our shore bases in the UK. Technology-enabled tools, like a scheduled optimizing engine, will speed up our annual planning cycle, make it more dynamic and easier to scale. Instructors will also be supported and upskilled to be able to create engaging technology-enabled lessons and learning experience based upon the latest educational thinking and techniques. Feedback from our platforms returning from operations also allows us to develop and adjust relevant training at speed. The reduction of inertia in the training system and the reduction of holding time will deliver our highly skilled sailors and Marines to the front line faster, and therefore enable operational advantage through a training system that can agilely react to unexpected operational requirements caused by conflicts or natural disasters. Finally, technology can help us have a more flexible training system, supporting a fixed proficiency level, but through an individual variable pathway in terms of time and method, customised to a pace and ability of the learner. It also provides us with an increasingly diverse methods of delivering the required content, allowing the training to be personalised to the learner and for much more effective learning system. Gone are the days of chalk and talk. It can also provide us with a powerful tool for assessing and evaluating performance, capturing real-time data and providing instant feedback. Simulations enable trainers to measure the trainee progress, identify areas for improvement, and refine protocols accordingly. They are also non-biased, free from subjective interpretations and human errors, ensuring fairness and accuracy in assessing competence and proficiency of our learners. Here, the operational advantage is gained through a reduced loss of wastage in the system's through flow, with each learner can achieve their potential before heading to the front line quicker, or use the extra time for other professional or personal development. So technology is changing the way we fight and will continue to do so for the future. It is also providing us with options to change the way we train and upskill our people. This has never been more necessary. The armed forces of the future will require different skills and abilities to those we required in the past. The shift towards more autonomous systems required more experienced and knowledgeable operators. New technology requires different skills, so we need to adapt and grow towards these skills against a hierarchical, bottom-fed organisation. We also need to recognise that our workforce is diversifying and be able to harness the improvements that this brings to the organisation. For the Navy, our workforce consists of 19 branches and over 200 specialisations. In a workforce of circa 30,000, this is unsustainable. Work is underway to reduce that to 7 professions and less than 50 disciplines, focusing on increased sustainability and transferable skills. We're also improving our recruitment approach to engage more intelligently with the next generation of sailors and to strengthen our zigzag career offering. But we must allow our sailors and Marines to focus on their futures, the new ships, the new skills, the new ways of working that we're introducing to meet the demands of the modern landscape. To summarise, the UK and its partners are facing a changing and challenging world. There is growing competition for resources and control, whilst terrorism and instability are constant threats. For all of this, technology will be key to maintaining the operational advantage and its utilisation to provide high-quality training to our people. Thank you for your time this morning. I look forward to speaking to you later.
Thank you very much for that, Commodore Joe. There's so much there that we can look to speak to or comment on later on. To the next service, and we'd like to very much welcome Brigadier Kirsten Dagless to share her thoughts with us.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and thank you again for the opportunity to be able to speak to you all today. So I come from head office in the Ministry of Defence, and today I'm going to look at what we are doing in the people space under Chief Defence People, with a specific focus this morning on our Pan-Defence Skills Framework. But if I start by setting the strategic context, following the release of the Defence Command Plan, we have just last month released the Defence People Strategy. This in direct response to the height and weight review of armed forces incentivisation, the Harafi report. 67 recommendations contained within the Harafi report, all of which were accepted by ministers and all of which we are now very much in the process of implementing to support and improve that which we can offer our armed forces personnel. If you've not had the opportunity yet to read or at least to examine the Harafi report, it is available online and I do commend it to you. It underpins almost everything that we are currently doing within the people space. So within the Harafi report, or indeed as a result of it, we have from Chief Defence People 7 critical paths. Those critical paths span from recruiting reform, both from a civil service perspective, but also from an armed forces perspective, looking forwards very much to the armed forces recruiting programme, and the armed forces recruiting service will be implemented subsequently from contract award. It also looks at total reward approach, how we incentivize our people across defence. And it also looks at areas such as digitisation. And from the area that which I wish to speak to you today, about enabling a modernised, skills-based organisation. You've already heard this morning many references to our requirement for a skills-based organisation. I accept that this is not new from an industry perspective. And indeed, in many respects, it's not new to defence in the way that we have previously had competencies-based, and we've always had skilled personnel. However, what we're looking to now is a single framework, pan-defence for both our civil servants and our armed forces personnel, to be able to enable that modernised approach by which we can reward, incentivise, and indeed retain our people that we are now looking to implement. And it's that which I'm going to give a little bit more detail on today. So the Pan-Defence Skills Framework. What is it and who's it for? Well, as I say, it is for all armed forces and MOD civil servants. We're working specifically across the MOD, and that includes our at-reach organisations, so DSTL, DES, and so forth. The Pan-Defence Skills Framework will bring, in its entirety, a common structure, a single framework for all our people. It will create skills and role descriptions, and I'll touch on that in just a few moments. But also, and importantly, it will build upon a single data source. So at the moment, we are using existing HR systems. That's my HR for our civil servants and JPA for our military personnel. But moving forwards, that will be from Defence HRS, a single HR program for both military and civil servants. This will enable our people to be able to interact with their own individual profiles, but also for line managers to help support the career progression of our people. And from an organisational perspective, identify what it is that we require from a skills-based perspective and then deliver against it. But why is it needed? Well, we recognise that like many other sectors, it's increasingly difficult to recruit and retain our people. This is not least because of competing salaries, but it's also as we need to be able to identify how we can best use the skills that our people have, the skills that our organisation require, and how we fill any gaps that we may identify. We know that there are a number of common skills across defence, and that's specifically whether it's from a civil service perspective or from an armed forces perspective. Many of those skills are common skills. And indeed, we've identified that the vast majority of the skills that we require are common skills. There is only a small percentage which is unique to either a single service or indeed to the military in itself. But we also need to be able to offer tailored training to deliver against the skills requirement. We need to have efficiencies in our training, whether that's use through technology, simulation, as will be discussed today, but looking that we can have commonality of our approach where indeed it is appropriate. So when we look at the benefits that the PDSF programme will deliver, it will very much enable us to have the right people with the right skills at the right time, being able to flexibly employ our people. We've had examples in the past where we've had Army chefs employed, for example, on Navy platforms. We may be able to have a greater benefit in how we are able to use our people moving forwards. It allows people to look at their own skills profile, to identify what their career aspirations are, and then using the future HR systems to be able to identify the way in which they can develop their careers, progress their training, and achieve their career goals. One of the principal benefits, it gives our people and the organisation transparency. Using data automation, but also the functionality of our future HR systems, we'll be able to identify the skills that we need, not just now, but in the future. And then we will enable our people to deliver against those skills. And importantly, of course, is efficiency and effectiveness through the automation, through the data systems, and through that transparency. But when I talk about the skills, What is it exactly that we mean by this? Well, the skills that we've identified, or the framework that we have used, is essentially across the KSEB that many of you in the room may be familiar with. The knowledge, i.e. what it is that our people already know. The skill application. So skills may be an overarching term, but it's the skills application that forms part of the KSEB. The experience that our people have, and indeed the behavior in how they enact that skill. Each skill that we've authored has up to 7 levels, ranging from awareness and foundation at the lower level, up to expert and strategist. Not every skill has all 7 levels. Most skills will have specifically 3 or 4 levels within a total skill. So they may have a level 1 and 2, 5 and 7. We don't need every skill to have all 7 levels. Across the piece, we've identified and indeed titled about 1,200 skills across defence, as I say, across both civil service and the military, and that's across all of the professions in each service and in the civil service itself. Many of those professions, of course, overlap and interact, but 1,200 skills have been identified. We are writing and authoring the levels for each and every one of those skills, and we are also rewriting our role specifications, so our job specifications, so that they are indeed enabled and underpinned by the skills as well. This allows us, from a strategic workforce planning perspective, to look at the supply that we have, i.e. the skills that our people have, and match it with the demand of the organisation. What is it that the skills that the organisation requires? We can then do the gap analysis, and through our training, can we upskill our people to meet with the current demand of the organisation and indeed the future demand as we identify it. This is what will inform our training requirement as well, because as we move forwards, we'll be looking at how we can train by skill. What does this mean for our courses? What does this mean for our training outputs? And that's what we are looking at the moment. We are also, from a military appraisal system perspective, so from military reporting, performance reporting, we're looking at how we can redesign our military reporting system to enable line managers and individuals to be reported on from a skills-based perspective. And within that, we will also be including behaviours. That work is very much ongoing at the moment. The work that we've been doing from PDSF has been accelerated through the use of artificial intelligence. And indeed, from a defence perspective, we have been leading in the HR function on our use of AI. This has enabled us to author the skills at pace, to be able to refine the skills, and then for our people to be able to assure them. Every single person across defence will have a skills profile by April 2025. And indeed, it's our aspiration that all our role profiles will have been written by April 25 as well. But how do we get the data together, and how have we used our AI to be able to enable this? Well, we started by the experimentation, as you would expect us to, and then we have integrated the use of AI at every stage throughout the development of the Pan Defence Skills Framework. This has allowed our people to examine what is available through our AI, working very closely with the Defence AI Centre to ensure that our use and indeed the governance of the AI is absolutely in accordance with our current policy, and it is secure in the way that we use it. We've used the AI to optimize performance, and it has reduced the workforce resource required to deliver the Pan Defence Skills Programme. But overall, and I stress it because it is so important to what we do, it has accelerated the pace by which we have been able to deliver the Pan Defence Skills Framework. We've used the AI specifically for skill definition, for data mapping, and for the administrative streamlining. We've used it to write all the products that we need in order to be able to communicate that which we've been doing through the Pan Defence Skills Framework. It has upskilled our force in the use of AI, and it's across the piece helped us to understand what AI can do for us within the training and the HR function in the people space. So as I conclude, and we'll come to questions in just a few minutes, the Pan Defence Skills Framework, as I say, authoring the skills and the role profiles across defence, identifying the demand required by the organisation, empowering our individuals to understand what their career pathway may look like, and in time it will be informing the training requirement across defence. Thank you for your time today.
Oh, thank you very much for that. And I'm sure there's going to be lots of comments and questions about the AI piece into that, especially it's been a developing theme this week. So thank you very much for that. There's lots of people online. And just to remind people, if you want to ask questions or make any comments as we go, you can do that through the Hopin app, Ring Central app. You can download that from your guide now, just to make sure that you can do that. Right. Our final guest, we are very grateful to Carolina. Professor Carolina has flown over from the States to be here with us. So will you give her a great big DSET welcome? Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. Some of you in the defense circles know me a little bit because I'm the person that many years ago developed the CAVE virtual reality system, which I think has helped on many levels in defense training. So today, because I'm more of a technologist than a training person per se, as my other two panelists, I'm gonna talk a little bit of something that has been on my head for 30 years related to training. I think we're getting to a point that we can finally do this. So, so as we already discussed in the panel today, the world is very complex. Things are moving really, really fast. Not only moving, they're changing very fast. We see, especially with all of you here from the different industries, we kept receiving all these innovations, all these changes, and we are all struggling trying to figure out how to bring them together. So the world of simulation, modeling, training is now converging more and more on what the buzzword of the day is: digital twins. So for me, this is really exciting because we've been working kind of piecewise on these elements for years and years and years. And finally, the world is catching up and is trying to think in a much more integrated manner. Of course, the military circles have been thinking about this for a while with the synthetic training environment. But I think the rest of the world, which is what we need, are thinking at a broader level through the digital twin environments. So as people ask me all the time, what is really a digital twin? So depending on my circle, sometimes I said, it's the same thing that we are all trying to do computationally for the last 30 years. It's just bringing all those pieces together. So on one side, we have the simulations, we have the data, we have all the different ways to capture input data, and all the algorithms and methods that we use for prediction, for decision making, and so on. Another very key element, I think, whether it's a digital twin for military training or a digital twin to operate a facility or a digital twin to represent the financial market, is an element that sometimes we think about it as an add-on, which is interactivity, interconnection, and really how do we keep everything very well updated so we keep the integrity of whatever it is we're trying to model. So from a technology perspective, it really presents quite a lot of challenges because we have to think very, very holistically on how we build whatever element that we are trying to do. And similar to the framework that it was presented earlier for training, we need to start in terms of these kinds of technology frameworks and how do we bring things together. Now, do we care about digital twins? Is it really a buzzword? I don't think it's as much as a buzzword as some others that we have had to deal in this sector for many, many years, because it's really, first of all, forcing us to think on centralized information. And I don't mean physical location of the information, but really one data set. And I think some of the previous panelists have mentioned that. Right now, everybody has their own data sets or their own algorithms or their own something. Thinking digital twins is really forcing us to share. If I have a piece of the data and you have another piece of the data, those two data have to come together as a single repository. Again, it can be physically distributed, it can be in many other structures, but really the content, there has to be one content, because otherwise we start breaking that integrity of the digital twin itself. They are really addressing the elements of speed and agility. We need to be able to do things fast. As we all know, especially again in a defense environment, the rules of the game change very, very quickly. So we technology designers, technology providers, we have to be very responsive to the needs of groups like my previous panelists, and be able to give them that speed and agility and adaptability to those rapid changes. Of course, it has to be effective and efficient. That goes without saying. I was very delighted to hear how emphasis both of you give to personalization. At the end of the day, we are not robots. We are human beings. So we all can be very effective, but we operate differently. I'm a very visual person. When I lose something, I get a picture on my brain of the last time that I saw whatever it is I lost. And typically, I can find it through my visual memory. Other people might be more methodical. I was here, and then I was there, and then I sat over here. So each one of us are individuals. So how we can use this technology on giving us that individualized ways to train, to learn, to make decisions, but again, maintaining the integrity of that world or phenomena or activity that the digital twin is trying to represent. Standardization goes back to my comments earlier about centralized information, because everybody's going to be doing a piece. So how do we bring all our pieces together? And to some extent, it allows us in certain circles quite a lot of risk reduction, because there is a lot of what if scenarios that we can practice. And of course, this is tremendously useful on defense environments. So why do we really have to think on terms of digital twins beyond the synthetic training environment? Is because now we really have to think. I'm a systems engineer by training, so we have to think like systems engineers. We have to think about the what I'm trying to do, how I'm trying to do it, why I want to do this, when, where. So all these aspects now come together under the digital twin infrastructure that is still has a lot of work to do, but hopefully events like this, DSET in the United States and many other events really bring us to really talk and exchange information among all of us. So if you have an interesting contribution and you have an interesting contribution, together can be much stronger contributions. So continue with the theme, what do we care about training? Well, digital twin at the end of the day is something that resides inside a computer or a collection of computers. So in order to access that information, we have some kind of portal. We need a portal to it. In the context of military training, that portal is going to be very, very critical. That has a strong visualization and immersion component to it, because we really need to put all that information in the context. What are we training for? What skills are we trying to develop? What is perhaps the structure of the different teams that are participating in this mission? So that helps us. When we talk about immersion, now we have a much larger, what I call real estate screen space, so we can actually put quite a lot more data. There's a lot of research that still needs to be done on how that data is visually represented, because one of the nice advantages of something like a digital twin is that we can put, in a sense, literal information that represents the real world, but we can put multiple layers of more abstract information that can be very informational. So how do we represent that information that actually supports the training, accelerates the acquisition of the skills, and enables the individual learners to really, really understand what's happening in their training. Of course, interactivity is going to be always critical because there are always things happening, in a sense, on the fly in a mission. And then another thing that I'm very interested on as a researcher, at the end of the day, as I'm a researcher, is what I call a true collaboration and really having targeted user roles. And I'm on another panel tomorrow, so I'll be talking a little bit more about that. But it's really trying to, if I have an immersive space, not all of us have the same role. So not the training, even if it's part of the same mission, it has to be really targeted to the individual roles that each member of the team is going to have in the mission, of course. Complexity has also been mentioned by my previous panelists. So we are really focused on addressing complexity with digital twins. When we talk about that, people say, what do you mean complexity? Complexity can be many, many things. From the perspective of training, one of the things that I see right now, and for those of you that maybe have seen me speak before, it really drives me bonkers, to be honest with you, the fact that we have a very broad range of visualization platforms right now, and I'll talk about that more tomorrow, but in a sense, we are regressing instead of progressing on how we think about training, because many of these platforms have very limited computational capabilities. If you wear a headset, it's attached to, some of them are self-sufficient. They have some computing on board on the headset, for example. Some others are attached to a computer. And we try to limit the capabilities of the training to the local computer that is actually operating the display system. So to me, it's a regression. And I'll show you a slide in a minute about why I think we are regressing. So we really don't have a good structure right now to handle the tremendous digital complexities that happen during a mission. And how can we capture that? There is a lot of course, pre-computed data sets, pre-computed missions. And even though we use AI, it's AI that is trained on data that we already know, things that have already happened. One thing that people don't realize sometimes is AI is always as good as how much we know about the problem. When you have a new problem, AI is actually very handicapped because it hasn't seen that particular pattern, it hasn't seen that particular situation, so it might not be as helpful. So that's another of my things. So I'm telling people, calm down on our excitement with AI. It's an extremely good tool, very good tool, but remember, it's as knowledgeable as the data that we feed AI, okay? The other element that I see, and again, this is my impression from the US, I'm not very engaged on how training is being done here in the United States, in the UK, is that sometimes training is how we develop training environments is somewhat disconnected from actual missions. So for me, the opportunity of really capitalizing on the technology of digital twins is the fact that we can actually capture the missions live. What about we have a very complex mission, and that mission is happening in the real world, and as that mission is happening, we're feeding that live to a training system. So we're actually seeing our trainees putting them just seconds behind in the operational theater. And we can explore how they are behaving, how they are responding, how they are making decisions, and how the mission might have changed based on what this particular group will have done. Right now, we cannot do that. We just cannot do it. We cannot even capture the mission at that level to sort of play it, in a sense, play it back and see what happens. So to me, that's sort of the thinking that we're trying to go in our laboratory and our big research team. So this is a little rewind to 1995 just to wrap up. So this is actually part of my doctoral thesis back in 1995. When I developed the CAVE system, my primary drive for that was to give it as much computational capabilities as possible and as much remote distribution as possible. So we had whole supercomputer centers cranking all the numbers for the simulations and feeding that live into the virtual space. We are not doing that now. That was my PhD thesis 30 years ago. And we still today are running on the local machines where the visual systems are attached to. In some cases, we are using some remote computation, but not at this level. I don't know in this audience, but I haven't heard very few people in the defense world that says, hey, I run my simulation with 1,000 GPU nodes. I don't think we're doing that. And we need to do that today. The complexity is at that level. So for people like me, this is very exciting because there's a lot of opportunities. And I think for a lot of you that are from industry, we have a lot of opportunities to really, now the technology is at a point that we can really make a big change and really have a big impact. And just to wrap up, this is a little perspective of what I call role or context-driven training environment. So why do we have to have a training system for this role and a training system for this role and a training system for this role? When we go on a mission, all those roles come together. So why don't we think, again, thinking on terms of digital twin, it gives us this picture. We have one environment. On that environment, we decide the roles. So we define what those roles are. So for example, in this picture, you can imagine the person in the middle is the on-foot soldier. The people on the left might be the on, I don't know the right military terminology, but the on-site commanders and decision makers. Maybe the ones on the bottom left might be the pilots operating the drones or some other remote environments. And maybe even like something, the person on the top might be the situation room where they have to make very quick decisions, but they might need to have kind of eyes on the ground because they are making a very, very serious decision up there. So why all those things cannot be a single computational environment that is adapted to each people, to the role, to the situation that they are in, and the location that they find themselves into. So that's right now is what makes me get out of bed in the mornings and continue my research and my work. Someday, hopefully, we'll be able to do something like this. So with that, I'm gonna wrap up and pass it back to Tessa.
Oh, thank you so much for that, Carolina. That was fascinating. And we're so lucky to have you here with us, and we're really grateful for you flying over. Please make the most of this woman's amazing brain and talent over the next 2 days, because she won't be with us for very long here. So I'm now going to invite our keynote speakers to come and join me on the panel, and we'll invite questions and comments from the audience. That is already working for MOD. Can you elaborate more how you will find the people with the skill set that you need for certain functions? Will there be another method of recruiting and actively finding those skills?
Thank you. So from a recruiting perspective, we will be looking to see how and indeed what skills that we require. However, the requirement at the moment remains extant. So therefore, we are using the current recruiting processes to be able to attract our people into the armed forces. And then as we move forwards, and as the PDSF is indeed implemented, then yes, we will look at how those skills underpin the requirement of our future recruits. But more to come on that space. Thank you.
Actually, it's something I did write down, which was how can we reflect those levels of skills into the industry so that when you're actually contracting, you go, oh yeah, that's a level that I know and I trust. Is that something that you think actually across defence that we should be looking at?
So if I can offer, we've actually been working very closely across all government departments with regards to how skills are used, and specifically across the defence industry as well. As I highlighted at the beginning of my presentation, a skills-based organisation is not unique to defence. It is largely used by industry. But by identifying what the skills are and using a single lexicon to be able to explain those skills, a single framework, then we have clarity in terms of what it is that we require, who we are employing, and what that means to our industrial partners. It also means, and one of the other areas that I look after is actually transition from the military into civilian industry. And one of the biggest challenges that we have for our service leavers is for our individuals to be able to communicate what it is that they have, the experiences and the skills that they've gained whilst employed in the armed forces. By having this single framework, which is recognised not just across the military, but across defence, it is anticipated that that will facilitate and make easier the communication for our service leavers.
I think the only thing I can perhaps add is that this is more than just attaining skills and the role of training in developing those skills. We need to move from a very sort of static view of it to a through life approach where we develop skills as and when they're required rather than just having a very sort of on-joining view of these things.
Well, no, my only thought, again, because I'm the techie, is one related to all those elements, it's also how we train them sometimes helps them to come and stay. In the United States, there is a big push, and I see it here too, to use a lot of the digital techniques because that's what's exciting to them. So that's how we attract them, just to, give them, hey, you're coming into this innovative organization and you're going to get all these skills that hopefully also in the future, when you return to a civilian life, then you have a very strong set of skills that will help you also to be successful.
Oh yeah, right, Rosmat.
The Pan Defence Skills Framework is a great idea and a great use of AI. It seems to me to be a tool, and you mentioned other things like retention. Apart from this tool, or to make the tool to be able to be effective, what are the other key enablers holistically that are going to let you achieve your aims?
It's like many major change programs. It is, of course, about changing and assisting change in both the culture and behavior that underpins our organization. So whilst the AI, the artificial intelligence, of course, has been used to help us author our skills, I should first of all add that it is just the first draft that the AI provides. It is absolutely a human at the end of that process to do the final check and to assure the product that the AI has developed. And it comes back to my colleague's point about the fact that, we do need to be careful about the data that the AI provides and assure that we assure that information appropriately. But from an integration and implementation perspective, it is, of course, about ensuring that we support our people. And by that, I mean not just the individuals, but their line managers, their career managers, and so forth, to be able to understand, to support, and to help the implementation of this skills-based organisation.
This is one for the check.
Okay, so this is good. So he's asking the chair, me, so I will answer initially because it could be contentious. So basically he's asking about the wider offer for the armed forces and what else can we do in terms of retention. So housing and support and everything else. So I think there are some difficult things there that we won't be able to be answered immediately because it's outside of the remit and outside of the lane that we've been asked to stay in for this a particular thing. But you're right, Rosmat, there are other parts of the offer for the armed forces that do need to be considered and supported and delivered, and in addition to the skills and training and everything else that will actually support that retention. I think if we leave that there as that comment, are you happy with that? Great. So I've got any other questions in the room? Yes. We've got lots going up.
Do you wonder at all about the security of using third-party AI tools in asking it military pertinent questions, and who is behind programming that, and whether they are all blue team players?
Well, I think there's obviously that you would be concerned about it, and it would only be used with judiciously and to have all that security done beforehand. But I will ask the panel to comment about anything that they've done using third-party AI, or was it third-party AI that you used, or was it developed in-house? Are you allowed to say?
I just comment that everything that we do is done very closely with Defence Artificial Intelligence Centre, which is, of course, our governance for the use of AI in defence. So everything that we do is very much cleared by them.
Right, we've got a question at the back. Abby.
Good morning. My question is also about the Pan Defence Skills Framework, but I guess it's applicable across the piece. You talk about how the skills profile is developed from an individual perspective and that you're able to illuminate what those gaps would be. So informing what needs to be closed out, but not necessarily how you would approach that. How do you envisage, or what's your opinion on levels of autonomy for individual learners to navigate how they would close some gaps?
Yeah, we were talking earlier about the personalisation. So would you like to comment on that, Jo?
So thank you for your question. And I think for us all, the challenge is to take a system which is designed for a singular experience and a large volume and translate that into something which is personal for the individual. So this is being able to truly understand that system, to break it into its component parts, to make sure that we have the broad approach of different training techniques in order to adapt to the different learning styles that we increasingly recognized within our learners, but also be able to use technology to help us to schedule those components of training in a way that allows people to accelerate at the right pace through that system. And so, as you can imagine, there is elements of technology and personalization throughout. So it is deconstructing our system in order to rebuild it in a way which is pertinent to the individual, and to make sure that we have the technological support in order to help us with that delivery.
One moment, please. My outdoor voice. Carolina made a very strong argument for digital twins and simulated environments for training, for skills development, etc., etc. And it's very clear that defence is looking at that way. But developing that simulated environment that allows personalised training across the whole range of capabilities, roles, etc., is a vast undertaking and requires a huge amount of compute and people who are able to develop that training, and more importantly, to maintain it, because even worse than no training is training that teaches you the wrong things. Is there an understanding within defence that we'll have to target where we do this, or is the ambition and therefore the investment going to be there to deliver a true digital twin that covers the whole environment? Sorry, I know that's a big question, and I don't expect a detailed answer.
Before I answer comments. No, Rory's going to need the mic. This is Group Captain Rory Henson-Begg, in case you don't know, and he's looking after the simulation capability for Air Force training and wider. So I'm going to ask you, Rory, to comment and say, do you think the Air Force is looking at doing that? And do you have the capability, before I invite comment from our panelists?
So clearly I'm bound by the same strictures that the rest of the panel are. But yes, Air recognises that we need to make better use of simulated environments to deliver training. And that's not just aircrew training, that's professional training, that's use of XR across the piece. We're not going to be able to boil the whole ocean with the 12-watt kettle that air or land or maritime have. So we need to be very disciplined about where we can get the most benefit and build on that.
So if I can start and then perhaps hand over to my technologically superior panelist. So from a sort of broad perspective, I think there's sort of two things for consideration. The first thing I would say is the advantages gained by considering a digital twin within our system are far broader than within the training environment, and the application of that data set can support effectively everything that we do. So we need to be careful not just to view it from a training perspective, but we can clearly see and have heard of the advantages that can bring. More broadly, if we take the points that Kirsten shared with us in terms of how we're going to view our skills from knowledge, skill, experience and behaviours, we need to be judicious in thinking about where that's really going to have impact. So there's one thing having a system which will allow us to exploit that in training, but we need to think about where that's really going to have biggest effect, which I think is to your point in itself. And so that deconstruction to analyse where we're going to get bang for buck is going to be key in that journey for us.
I can add a little bit. So by no means I claim that this is something that is ready to go right now, obviously, but I think that's something that has to be on our horizon, both in the United States side as well as on the European side, because I think that's the only way that we're going to continue being successful and continue to be leading the world. But it is a very significant culture change for technology providers. Technology providers would like to be, to some extent, close because we feel that gives us the competitive advantage. I have my product and only I can provide that product, and it's not necessarily a bad business model, but I think with the way the world is moving, the speed at which things are changing so quickly, we need to move away with that model. The synthetic training environments, it's really pushing for open architectures and sharing and all that. I think we need to step it up a notch. And it is a challenge because on one side, we need to be able to allow everybody to have their competitive advantage, but at the same time, that competitive advantage not hindering the ultimate goal, that is to have a strongly trained armed forces. Now, against being a technologist myself, I have been my entire career, I was probably the first person in the world using the word sustainability in technology. That was actually part of my PhD thesis on the early 1990s when I built the cave. Number one priority for me when I did it was, how do we maintain this monster? Unfortunately, a lot of the concepts and ideas that I developed at that time didn't trickle when the cave went commercial. So the cave became a nightmare to maintain for those of you that had any experience with it. It became highly, highly expensive. And to some extent, it has dwindled down the use, because even though it provides a lot of benefit, it's just too complex to handle. Because again, a lot of the principles that I initially developed when I created it were lost on this issue of competitive advantage with the different vendors that start commercializing that technology. So I encountered that a lot. So for 32, 33 years, I've been always talking, we have to build our technology in a manner that is sustainable, and not only sustainable on the path of time, but also sustainable. So when it goes into your organizations, you don't have to be a PhD level like myself in computer science in order to deal with it. You just want to come into your training, press a button, turn it on, and that's it. So that's something that, again, is a tremendous cultural shift on how we do things today. So I think it's the whole community. All of us have to really work together, and that also goes to some other gentleman back there, talk about security. How do we trust what we're being given and all that? So there's a significant effort that is on the technology development, but there is also a significant effort that we all have to put together on how that technology actually has more of a social model, for a lack of a better word, So there are some efforts on that. I was kidding before the talk. I have a huge deadline today for a big proposal to the American government, not related to defense, related to another field, but we're setting up the framework for this. It's going to be for a different sector, but most likely it's going to extrapolate to defense. And it's exactly like that. How do we create a new business culture that somehow balance the openness that we need for sharing with the security and with elements like IP, intellectual property, again, competitive advantage and all that. And it is a challenge. And like I said, that's what I'm still out here getting out in the morning and dealing with all these issues, because it is a big challenge. And what we forget sometimes as technologies is not only is a big challenge, as both of you mentioned, there is actually human beings at the other end of that technology. So what we have to do, we have to take it very, very seriously on how we do it. So people's lives, people's many other elements of our lives are at stake if we don't really address all these issues. And it has to be fast. We don't have 20 years to solve this problem, but maybe we have 5 to 7 to solve this problem.
Thanks, Tess. If we ignore the recent proposals to introduce national service, it turns out that there appears to be many young people willing and wanting to join our armed services. And where the challenge appears to be, and has been for a number of years, is the time it takes to process them and bring them on board. And many young people are getting disillusioned with having to wait, say, 12 months before they actually get an application accepted and move on and start their career somewhere else, perhaps in industry or perhaps elsewhere. Can I ask the panel how progress is being made in streamlining that recruitment process and getting our young people into the armed services in the first place?
So you meant you could ask the chair?
I'll ask the chair.
Yeah, thank you. So I've recently been at the reservist conference, and we were looking at exactly that, the pipeline and things like this. I don't know if you can actually answer directly, other than if you'd like to comment on where you're making improvements, because as we know, there's an industry contractor who's actually responsible now for the first part of that recruitment pipeline. And I know that that's being addressed, but the figures that I know about aren't super from a reservist perspective. 25,500 applicants last year and only 1,100 actually coming into service, which is fewer than those leaving. But there is a definite shift and commitment that I heard where they are looking to actually improve that this year. So that's the facts and figures from the reservist conference this year. Would you like to make any comments on this? No. Okay, so we are in a difficult situation because of the election process, but I've definitely seen a commitment to actually try and improve that process, and we've had talks before here about that happening. Okay, so I've got a couple online actually coming in. So this is going to be quite a hard one to do directly, because unless you know all 1,200 skills off by heart, Brigadier, then we'll see. It says, how many M&S skills are mentioned in the Pan Defence skills framework? Also, what is going to be to increase retention across defence? I think, well, we've addressed that earlier, but did you know, I mean, off by heart, how many modelling and simulation skills are mentioned in? No, I didn't think that would be the case. I'll tell you what, anonymous question, and we will get back to you with that answer at a future date. But good question. And then we have another one here, also anonymous. Why do we generalize training in a digital twin environment? It is very important to separate individual and collective training and what level of skills we are training for. Would you like to come back to that? So there's a comment here to say that we're generalizing training in the digital twin environment, and it's important to separate individual and collective training.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like I tried to explain in my slides, it's not one size fits all. I mean, the really exciting part is once we have it in a digital setting, then all the personalization is when it takes place. Not only personalization per individual, but in a sense, personalization or tailoring to skills, to variety of missions, to different type of teams and actions. So there is a lot of layers on this way of thinking. But again, the goal is to have a central unified digital space versus silos of I have this element, this digital training for this and this synthetic training for that and this is training for that, but really bringing it all together. That's the challenge. But, you really think about it, hey, let's don't forget that in 2007, none of us had a cell phone in our pockets, okay? Now we cannot live without them, all right? It's been quite a number of years since that happened, but it has evolved to a point that, even some of us, I'm pushing 60 already, I cannot live without it. So I live pretty much all the way into my 40s without a cell phone in my pocket, So the pace of all these things is exponentially faster and faster and faster. I mean, I arrived yesterday here to the UK. I have not gotten a single physical pound, coin, or bill. Again, 10, 15 years ago, it was a drama. I even had to bring traveler's check and all that, So that's what we have to keep in mind. I mean, technology is in a sense, invading our lives in ways that we don't even realize at the fastest pace. So that has to propagate to more specialized environments like training. So, and we have to think, again, as a technologist myself, we have to think very broad on how that technology needs to be built now. And then as the teams that utilize that technology, you also have to think very broad. If I have these training needs for these different groups, what are the intersections, what are the commonalities, and what are the pieces that need to be more individualized and more separated? Because that will help us as well to know, okay, here's the common base, and here are the branches from that common base. So it's very, very challenging, very, very challenging. But that's the way, in my opinion, that's the way we have to think. We have to be broad and then start putting the pieces.
And I'm just going to come back to that to bring it to the context of we talked just before we came out about how we all learn differently, and you talked about the personalization of the training and looking at that. Andy Hawkes, thank you, Andy, for the question. Is looking at will the Pan Defence Skills Framework, I can't even say it now as well, PDSF. It's not the sweetest acronym, is it? Look at interacting data-wise with systems from flight sims to iPads to learning systems. Are we going to look at the personalization? Does that mean learning differences as well as the actual skills, or just in general?
Sorry, I thought I left it online earlier. Yeah, sorry. It's a topic for discussion. First, was a competence-based approach considered? It's skills, but a lot of industry use competence-based. It was just a question stroke topic. And the other one, in a way, is a little bit related and could be expanded is that data question. Will this framework be revealed to industry in the sense of the data? Because presumably if you've got a flight simulator, you might want to say, well, the instructor would say, yeah, they've got that skill. I'm just making a simple example. But that data needs to somehow get into the wider system, the HR system. So I just wonder, is anyone looking at that? And also, obviously, the learning management system, all those good things. Is anyone looking at that data side, interoperability? So there's two. The first one's a quick question, I think. Topic.
I think
sorry.
competency versus skills, I think, is it implied that competency means skills and skills means competencies?
So there's definitely a relationship between competencies and skills. And I think the language is used in different ways in different organizations. And certainly from a defense perspective, we have essentially our own lexicon in terms of our application of those terms and what the competencies mean in terms of something that is certified, and a skills which is more broad, which may be underpinned by a competency, but is more broad in terms of the knowledge, skills, experience, and behaviours. In terms of learner management systems, we have wider programs looking at our learner management system, how we collate data, how we identify our training requirement. And there is, of course, an interconnection between the skills that our people have, the skills that our organisation needs, and how that informs our training requirement, and ultimately how we record the progression of our individuals through their training pathways.
So I'm not sure if this helpfully builds on your point, but once you have this framework, and the framework importantly allows you to connect the systems which are your data records, and as my learned colleague has spoken to, then the opportunity is to exploit that, both for the benefit of the individual and the benefit of the organisation. And this can be about having a broader view of your organisational ability in the broadest sense of that, through to crafting something far more meaningful for the individual. And so your perspective will a little bit depend on where you stand whilst you look at that system, but being able to access that data and apply that understanding to the situation will be key, which I think is the broader point that you're making. So that joining of the systems in order to access the data at the point you require it is a key part of our journey.
And the cool thing is that everyone in this room now we know all about this, can make suggestions on how we could use that data to the benefit of our armed forces as well. So I'm looking forward to hearing those suggestions. Yeah. Oh, Ian, yes, at the back.
Thank you. Good morning. Today, we're often defining and specifying systems and services that may end up being used by people that perhaps aren't even born yet. So as a question to the chair, how do you think we should be considering the natural skills and behaviors that people are going to be acquiring through their development of their life earlier in their life into the frameworks that we should be thinking about in the future, and defining those solutions to take account of it?
So yeah, so I'll start with a comment that I delivered some training simulation part task trainer kit in 1998, which is still there. And I know full well that there's lots of people in this room that were not born in 1998 and would probably not appreciate being trained on those. So I'll invite comment as well from the rest of the panel about how do we future-proof and what we're delivering now for future generations to be trained on and learn with.
I mean, again, from my perspective, we think in terms of, what are the trends? Okay, if all of you remember, all of you that are maybe 50 and over, you might remember that, we all live when television wasn't even in color. We only had 1 or 2 stations, and we physically had to stand up from our couch to go and press the on and on button on the television. All right. So as we got, like, for me, and as I go into this world, my generation we are interested on how does it work, how much you can do it. You will see me still today, a screwdriver on hand and opening things and cracking them open to see how they work. Now, the generation after ours, we're more interested not so much on the thing, how it works, but actually what you can do on top of the thing, which are more, let's say, the software elements. The generation today doesn't really care. It's there. It's like a refrigerator. It's just there. All it matters is it keeps my food cold. The generation today is like all these digital things, all this whatever, it's just there. All it matters is it enables me to do something with it, but I don't care about how it works, what else I can do with it and all that. The upcoming generations is gonna be still even more pervasive. They might not even wanna waste time on pressing the on button and just sitting there for 2 minutes until it comes on. So we really have to, in a sense, take a little bit of a historical look and progress into the future and realize, the mindset. So to me, again, as a researcher, when I think into the next generations coming, we are always very aware that whatever we do, it has to be like it's just in there with no effort, very simple, very little knowledge on how it operates, how you set it up, how you do things with it, and something that is just almost like magic. It just does something. Now, it is very challenging, but we are the technology providers. We have to take all those things into account. They are not going to sit there if you have these very talented young people coming to you and it takes them 2.5 hours to launch a simulator, they're not going to use it. They're just not going to use it. Even if it takes them 5 minutes, they're not going to use it. Not only that, if it launches and it crashes, oh my God, those of you, this is maybe politically not correct, those of you that live the life of Silicon Graphics, when we were using Silicon Graphics machines, we love them. They brought us here. But oh my God, those things were crashing all the time, especially when you do a trade show like this one. And we just very patiently dealt with machine crashing, rebooting, resettling everything, and then 30 minutes later, 2 hours later, it was operational. We don't tolerate that today. If it doesn't run, hey, I am not dealing with this machine. So that's in my perspective from, again, technology side. We have to think the next generations, we have to do things that are very effective to the point that we're trying to train them, but at the same time, incredibly, whatever the word is, pervasive, natural, transparent, whatever it is, that they don't even know that they're dealing with technology. And that's a huge challenge, in my opinion.
So I think I would just sort of reflect against your comment that you've alighted on a important change driver in terms of what we see in terms of the effect that we're trying to deliver operationally, and that's understanding the people in the system, and that's really important, but would be allied in terms of change driver with the changing nature of warfare within that time frame and the broader context. So all these things add to the complexity. So I don't have a specific answer apart from the fact we will need to continue to adapt against all those change drivers.
I mean, have you got any suggestions?
The only things I can think of would be, are we spending enough time with people and how they're behaving in the earlier parts of their life and studying that in an ethical way, clearly not just for interest, but if we're giving someone a solution, the first question you ask them, for example, is, show me how you'll access your email system on this, and they respond with, what's email? Because they don't use it or they use something else. My opinion is we've probably failed already if we specified a system that isn't useful for the people that end up using it. So how do we understand what those people today are using in their daily lives that would help them with onboarding into systems and solutions that we'll have in the future? That would be my thought.
No, that's really interesting, actually, isn't it? Going earlier and looking at younger ways of learning. And just for the record, yes, we used to bribe each other to turn the TV on and off. Like, I'll pay you 20p to get off the couch and do it.
You know, I mean, I think that's a very valid point. And again, that's what we do on the research environment. So for example, in my team, we have several researchers that come from the branch of education. So we are looking at this early generation as far as, you know, childhood development and all those things, and the impact of technology on childhood development, and how that impacts changes on behavior, changes on adoption of technology. You know, but at the same time, the other element that we haven't really talked about, and again, I'm not very familiar with the situation here in the UK, but in the United States, there is tremendous inequality. So there are groups, societal groups that have a tremendous access to technology when they are children, and there are societal groups that don't have any access to technology when they are children. So those two groups, when they become 18, 20, and they want to come into this world, their I don't know how to say, their mental approach to it is going to be a little bit different. Some of them are going to be very wild and they're going to think it's very cool. The other ones are going to be like, whatever, you know, it's boring. So there is research that I'm very aware of that is being done around the world of, again, trying to understand this generational development and how it changes, even how we just teach math, or how do we teach history, or things like that. Because kids right now don't get a book. They just, you know, my son is right now, he's starting high school. He's gone through his entire education with an actual paper book. It drives me bonkers because it's like, you have to have a real book on your hands. But he's gone all with tablets and computers. And yeah, the books are there in digital manner, but to me, it's not the same thing. But he's very successful. He's getting through school without, again, having physical paper on his hands, you know. So it's again, a process. It's a long process, but we have to be very aware. And that's, again, why, and I put on my earlier slides, partnerships are critical, even more critical today. Partnerships between industry people, academic people, end users are very, very critical to the success of what we are trying to do now.
We're almost out of time, but we'll do one last question here.
Thank you very much for all of your presentations, and I'm seeing echoes of that throughout my career. Skills, competencies, the need to acquire a skill at master's level still requires 10,000 hours of practice. Bill Gates and Steve Jobs achieved that in their teens, and look where they've got today. I'd love to hear your comments on how you think that these modern technologies can help our future and current soldiers, sailors, and flyers achieve those 10,000 hours of practice as well as just training and education. Thank you.
I don't think there's a question there. One of the things we did discuss earlier is that a lot of the younger people coming through into this space right now have been through a pandemic. And that sometimes, when we were talking earlier about the use of iPads into training, and that they're actually finding it triggering rather than useful. There's nodding from fire. And look, we have got a massive amount of next geners here this week as well. And they've got their own network that we've supported to set up. And they had a session yesterday and they've got a session tomorrow. Instead of us commenting on that, why aren't we going to ask them like what they want and how they want to learn, and what we can do that actually brings out the best in them? Is that fair, Fire? Would you like to comment on that?
So something that I find interesting is I've heard many people speak about the younger generations, but I've heard very little younger generation speak, I think. So that's what you're commenting on. And something that I also see is often people think that younger generations want more digitalization, but the people who join the army don't join the army because they can play games in VR. They join the army because they want to be outside. They want to do training, exercises. So I think we overestimate the way they want to handle things.
Thanks very much. That's why we need everybody in this community to be part of this. And so thank you for that. And again, I will say yesterday, I was in the young persons panel yesterday and the under 30s, and we are terrible. We have been terrible in defence, but infantilizing those that are under 30 years old, fully grown, qualified adults, and not actually asking for their opinions and expertise. So thank you to all of you that are here. And, you know, instead of asking us what is engaging, go and ask them, because they're the people that are going to be engaged and trained and develop for the future. So thank you for that. We're out of time. Okay, for now, just for here. So I want to hear a great big thank you for all of our panelists today. And please remember that you can ask them questions directly into the platform to their DM. So there's always a direct way of safe way of contacting all of you through that. There's the virtual platform is open and will be open past conference as well, so that you can get all of this, watch the video playbacks, download any content that you need, and especially if there's people you missed. But for now, we're going to do coffee because I think everybody needs a brew, and we'll see you after the break. Thank you very much, guys.